What's going on YouTube? My name is Mr. Crippled, and today I want to go ahead and give you tips and tricks with the Apollo aspect. Now, before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to keep up with any future content, I will be leaving a link to my Twitch and my Discord in the description below. Now, the Apollo aspect is very, very solid. I don't think it's going to be like changing any metas or anything like that, but I do see a reason to use this aspect because one, you get the benefit of being Apollo and having a global rotating ult as a possible tank or a support, right? He comes loaded to the brim with team buffs. And he has really solid poke. He has really good interactions. And even though he doesn't really have like a good, like super defensive tool, he does have something to protect his backline and to be able to push objectives with his team a lot quicker. He's kind of reminds me of like a ranged, almost a ranged Athena in a way, because he can get across the map whenever he needs to. He can stun for his teams. He can slow for his team. He can give attack speed to his team. And the way his passive interacts with this version of his kit is very interesting and honestly a lot of fun to use. And I wanted to go ahead and show y'all how this works. So, there's a couple of things that we need to take note of, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main character screen so we can give an actual visual of what these abilities do. But it does change a lot and be a little bit daunting when you're first taking a look at it. So let's go ahead and head back. So, there's three major things that we need to take account. Technically four, but three major things you need to understand for his character. The first thing is that it completely changes his passive, as you know. He will no longer gain attack speed whenever his Audacity stacks reach 10. Instead, it makes his 1 get a free cast, basically. He can cast his 1 again at full damage without it costing any mana, right? That's 1. The other thing that the aspect does is that it makes it to where his 1, so beautiful, does less base damage, but it scales up with item health. So the more health that you have, the harder this ability is going to hit. This does include the passive version of So Beautiful, the one that you get after you reach 10 stacks, right? The other thing that this passive does is that Serenade now grants protections and health shields whenever you cast it. So it can be both used to mez somebody diving on your backline and give them a health shield to give them a free way out. Okay, so keep that in mind. And the last bit, the fourth bit for the aspect that's kind of here and there, it is important, but you're going to be doing it passively, so you don't really need to worry about stacking it, is that whenever you grant a buff to an ally, this does not include yourself. Keep that in mind. It does not include yourself. Whenever you grant a buff to an ally, you gain an Audacity stack. And remember, his 3 already gives a movement speed buff to all of his allies. So his 3, his 2, and his 1 now all give stacks of Audacity. So, now I'm going to go ahead and show you what these abilities look like and how they interact. Okay, so, there is something that can be a little complicated to think about, but a very important interaction for why I think this version of Apollo is so good. Okay, and it has everything to do with how the 1 works. If you notice, in the aspect description, it does not have an internal cooldown for the aspect version of the 1, the passive version. And I'm going to go ahead and build up to 9 stacks right now, so you can kind of see what the animation or the artwork looks like for it. So as you can see, I'm at 9 stacks. If you look at the artwork for your 1, it's the harp with the blue background. And if you look at the casted version of it, the range is still pretty long. It's a little bit wide, so you can potentially hit the wave and the enemy god at the same time. And right about here is where it doesn't hit, right? So, if you go ahead and get that next stack, you'll see that the artwork changes to yellow. The background for your Audacity stacks is now empty. And if you look at the artwork, it does have a little bit more range. A little bit more range, and it's a little bit thinner. Keep in mind, both these versions do hit the same amount of... they both hit just as hard as each other. Jesus, my next words. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, keep in mind, both of these abilities hit just as hard as each other. Even though there's going to be a visual difference, they're going to do the same amount of damage. The thing that you need to take note of, however, is that you can continue to build stacks of Audacity while having your first charge. Why is this important? Well, when you build back up to 10 stacks, you will notice that the stacks are not consumed, right? What this means is that when you cast the aspect version of your 1 and you're already at 10 stacks, you will gain another shot. And if you hit the ability, you'll immediately gain 1 stack of Audacity, building towards your next shot. So, when you do it again, if you have your base 1 still active, you can still cast that version. And if all 3 of those hit, you are going to be continuously gaining stacks of Audacity. So you can be spamming your 1 in theory forever with only maybe 2 or 5 seconds of cooldown between each one. So you can get a really big burst with 3 and then continuously shooting 2 afterwards. And then keep in mind, you still have your autos that build stacks of Audacity. Whenever you buff an ally, you gain a stack of Audacity. Whenever you ult somebody, you gain 4 stacks of Audacity if all the hits hit. And then if you hit your 3, regardless if it buffs an ally, and regardless if it doesn't hit anybody, if you cast it, it hits somebody or buffs an ally, you will gain a stack of Audacity. And I believe if you manage to do both, it will give you 2 stacks. So you're going to be the theory behind this is to stack Audacity as quickly as possible, and then being able to cast your 1 repeatedly over and over and over. And since even though it does less damage than the original version, it's going to do, in theory, you're going to be out DPSing somebody whenever you're spamming this ability, because it's going to be scaling with your maximum health. So it's going to be a tank with a bunch of CC buffs and constantly hitting you with a long-range poke button that gives attack speed to his allies. Now, I don't think they stack with each other, unfortunately. And the other thing of note is, if you do take this into solo lane, the buffs do not give you stacks of Audacity, because it doesn't count towards yourself when you use a buff. So you won't. So as you can see, if I pop this, right, even though it would give a health shield to all of us and extra protections, it's not going to give me a stack of Audacity because I didn't buff anybody. But if the jungler was standing next to me, my carry was standing next to me, mid, if anybody was standing next to me, then I would gain a stack. So there is a way that they tried to balance it. I wish they didn't low-key, but then he would be extremely broken, because then he's a rotating tank, a high rotating tank with a global ult, multiple buffs, and CC. So that's why I think this is actually a really solid aspect for him to have. There is maybe 1 or 2 issues. He's not really an amazing support, right? Not like somebody like Cupid, who has a AoE healing ultimate and a stun that still gives a health shield and healing, right? And it's not like somebody like Sobek, who has instant CC and really good protections in multiple different ways to like stun you. But he does offer really solid buffs for the teams, ranged support, and a really good mez, honestly, because the mez lasts for about 2 seconds, I believe, if they don't get hit. So you do have really good ways to defend, but it's not the best at it. I do still think it's a really great aspect in general, and does have a place somewhere in possibly higher levels of play, but you're probably not going to see it too often. It's probably going to be something like a specialization. So I think it's solid. I definitely think y'all should give this a try. There are a couple cards. There are a couple things I want to go over. Just his cards, really solid cards, and a build that I've been having fun with so far with Apollo solo. So, for solo lane, if you want, you can go Warrior's Axe. Warrior's Axe is probably the best in-slot item for him in solo right now, because it'll give him some type of healing on top of this. Even though it doesn't really give any health, but it does give you strength and protections, which is still really solid for him to have. For a solo laner, you could maybe go War Flag if you really want to, but you're not really going to get like a huge benefit from it until like late game. So if you really don't want to go either of those, another option is Bluestone. Since you're going to be casting, free casting a lot, this does give you some really good clear potential. and at later game it does give you 200 health. So this is probably your best damaging starter, while Warrior is actually going to be your best defensive starter. Me personally, I usually go Sundering Dex anyway, so I'll go that. The first card that I recommend building is going to be between two cards. Right? The first card is the normal card, Runeforge Hammer. This is a really solid starter for characters with a lot of hard CC, and luckily Apollo has two. Med is counted as hard CC, and if you look at your 3, when you dash at somebody, it knocks them aside, so it's a knock-up. That does count as hard CC, so he has 2 ways to proc this item. And the reason why this card is really good on characters like Bracken or Hercules comparatively to somebody like Odin, who does still have hard CC, is the fact that if you hit somebody else with hard CC again, it reduces the cooldown of this item by 3 seconds. So ideally you would want to have multiple forms. So since Apollo does, he can use this item. The other item that I recommend, which is going to be the more fun item, is where is it? Eye of the Storm. Why? Because when this active item, whenever you activate it, it causes a vortex that does damage equal to your maximum health. Also, since it's a vortex, it's basically like a pseudo slow. So it's going to be constantly dragging them back towards you. And the reason why it's so good is because you also have a slow on your 3 and you have a stun. And the damage from Eye of the Storm does not take you out of the meds. So they'll still be taking damage from Eye of the Storm without ever being able to fight back unless they have beads. Now, again, in team fights, the med is not really going to be all that useful, but in a one-on-one situation, it's a good way to get like some free damage before like attacking again. So I recommend building this card if you want to have a little bit of fun. And if you do build this card, I recommend stacking it with Mystical Mail, because Mystical Mail does give protections, extra health, and it has tick damage that doesn't break mez. So these 2 cards together is already going. So these 3 cards together at the very beginning is going to be doing a lot of damage. Now, I do still recommend building some kind of CDR at some point in the build. There's not really a lot of CDR cards that give health, but if there is one that I recommend over anything else, you're probably going to be able to guess it. It's Talisman of Purification. It's free beads, health, cooldowns, and magic protections. And plus, on top of that, because you're going to be in solo lane, it gives you the freedom of still being able to build something like Sundering Axe or Barrier, and then still having the safety of Talisman of Purification. So you will essentially be one of the hardest to kill enemies in the game as a tank, while also being able to rotate at any given point to be a nuisance. Another good card, Eros Bow. Eros Bow doesn't really see a lot of play because there's not a lot of supports like Cupid who also uses this card. Apollo is one of those supports now, so he's another contender to be able to use this item. Why this is so good is that whenever you mark an allied god, whenever you basic attack an enemy, they heal for your maximum health per basic attack. And it has a very, very long range. So this is a really solid card to have because it's going to give you attack speed, it's going to give you a lot of health, and it's going to give you a pseudo way to heal your team. It's not going to be as strong as like a Cupid heal, but you're going to be building a lot of health nevertheless. There's 2 more cards that I want to talk about. One of them being Draconic Scale. This is a good late game tank item because it does give you health and protections, while also giving you extra protections whenever you take damage. And you'll gain protections towards that. You'll get protections equal to that damage type. So if you're taking magical damage, you'll gain a stack from that. You'll gain a stack of magical protections. And the last card I want to talk about, honestly, even in solo lane. Where is it? Again, you can probably already guess it. It's Gauntlet of Thieves. You won't really be able to stack this on your own unless you're constantly killing the solo. Or you're letting the wave kill each other, which in theory is going to hurt you more than help you. But Apollo has an added benefit of being able to rotate to any lane whenever he wants to with the teleporter and his ultimate. So he could still build this really quickly if he's taking a more aggressive role as a solo laner. But those are all the cards that I recommend. If you really want cooldowns, items that I recommend are Shield of the Phoenix, because this will give you some type of self-sustain and solo. And it does give you a good amount of health. Another card that I recommend, again, for physical defense, is probably going to be Breastplate of Valor. If you need magical cooldowns, then Gauntlet of Thieves is right there. Or Genji's Guard is right there, because it does give you protections and cooldown rate. The difference is, though, is that this one doesn't really give you health. Again, other honorable mentions are Hussar's Wings. I don't really recommend building this all the time, but this does give you a lot of health and makes you immune to slows. Phoenix Feather is also a really good item to have, because this does give you healing, magic protections, and it does damage equal to your missing HP. So this is also a really solid card. Obviously, Rodus Ankh, if you absolutely need the anti-heal, you need to sacrifice a card somewhere, that way you can reduce enemy healing. This is going to be a necessary thing in probably most of your games. And then finally, the last card I recommend is probably Freya's Tears. This is probably going to be the best in-slot item for your cooldowns anyway, because it gives the most, while also giving you extra protections whenever you lose 25% of your maximum health. Again, doesn't really give any health, so if you absolutely need the cooldowns, you can sacrifice a bit and build Freya's Tears somewhere. But those are all the items that I recommend building on this character. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Thank y'all for watching, and y'all take care.